Which language do you speak? And I do not mean English or French. That's not the point here. The question is, which language do you speak as a leader? When you now wonder, what do you mean with that? Is there a leadership language? And yes, there might be. We have an expert on the matter with us here today. Hello and welcome, Mark Wessner.
Good morning, and thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you very much for taking the time for this, and I get straight into it. You wrote the book, which is called The Four Languages of a Leader, finding your heart language and building teams that can connect with anyone. And that's a massive claim here. Many people say, okay, look, there are certain people who I connect with. There are certain people who I do not connect with that well. This is just how life goes. Some people you like, some people you don't. We just float along. You have a different claim here. Can you tell us what are the four languages of a leader?
Yes, I actually do have a different claim, and that observation is true. We do connect with different people in different ways, but the book is actually exploring why that's the case and how
Hmm.
that works well, or how understanding it works well for a leader. Because really, as a leader, our primary tool that we can do our leadership through is our voice, is through communication. We can have all kinds of skills, but if we can't communicate effectively, it doesn't matter what our skills are, right? We can't connect with our board of directors or potential clients or partners or whomever it is. And yeah, so each one of us would have a language that is our heart language, our default language. We just kind of naturally go that way and we're good at it. But as the framework in this book introduces, perhaps there are different kinds of languages that each of us are really good at naturally, and different kinds of languages that suit the situation differently. And so that's what I explore in this book.
Mm. Excellent. What was your motivation to write this kind of book at this point in time?
Yeah, it's a great question. Two pieces. Number one, just personal experience in my own sense of frustration in a specific context where I was communicating regularly and going, why is it just doesn't feel like it's connecting? It doesn't feel like it's working for me. I'm not sure if it's working for others. And it wasn't for lack of effort. It was just something was wrong. And then I came across some writing by another researcher who introduced this framework, who I've since actually built a relationship with and expanded on, which is what this book is
Hmm.
about. And then the second layer is as I began to do more executive coaching and work with other executive leaders in other contexts, realizing that I'm not the only one who experienced this frustration. And so then I've taken that basic model of research and that framework and expanded it across leadership in all kinds of contexts. So I use it quite a lot in my own life and leadership, and also equipping others to be able to just effectively lead more effectively.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you had to lead by you had to lead by example. You even worked for governments, and let's face it, you have a lot of different interests to juggle right there. Because usually people say, "Look, we have about 15 different points of view. Could you please serve all of them to full extent at the same time? Doesn't matter if it
Yeah.
goes really quick." So, what do you now do when people, because when I prepared for this interview, many people were interested in this, and some people, which I found quite interesting, some leaders said, "Look, I found this also remarkingly open. They said, look, I heard of different systems. However, I really struggle to implement systems because I think my personality is I am good on the subject matter, but I'm not really a people person. So no matter how hard that, and then they mentioned, oh, I did this and the color system and the personality type test and yada yada yada. They tried all of that and they said nothing of that worked for them. Do you think there are people who really are not people, or do you think that with this system, really anyone can connect to people?
I think with this system, anyone can connect because the point of it is each of us has a default language, a certain. And so, what I mean by a default heart language is when you and I communicate with somebody, regardless of whether we're on a stage public speaking or it's one on one or in a team setting, whatever the context is, when we communicate, each of us by default is expecting and wanting a certain kind of response by the other person or the other group, not specific to the topic, but just a way of responding. And so, for example, some of us are wired to, whenever we're communicating, what we need is the other person to respond in the moment in some sort of personal way or a responsive way. Others of us, our sweet spot is when we communicate with somebody and we're wanting them to go, huh, I need to think about that more often. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's that kind of framework that this book and just my experience has described. And so it's really not about personality or color or animal or different. And those are there's lots of validity to those approaches. I use some of them in my own coaching,
Hmm.
but this isn't really doing that. What it's trying to do is find help us identify the way of communication that resonates with us, and then when we speak and use our strategies of communication and how we put things together that are in sync with that, then the other people go, oh, I'm connecting with this. No, they may or may
Hmm.
not agree with what you're talking about. That's not the point, but they're connecting with it, right? And so I really do believe that, and I have yet to see an example that would contradict this, that each of us can actually communicate well with other people. And it's most effective when we use the language, the way of communicating, crafting our message in a way that resonates with us, because we're just
Hmm.
naturally good at it. And then exceptional leaders learn to use the other languages and sometimes recognize that it's not their sweet spot, but they have someone else on their team that they can bring in
Yeah.
who they have a different heart language that is just perfect for the moment, and then let them do the communication. So
Yeah.
it's a good team tool as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And also important to have have a system in place that actually works. You already said there are lots of models out there, and let's face it, some of them, when it comes to people saying you are the monkey, you are this, this is rather a debatable approach from a scientific point of view. Let's be clear with that. However, one question I have to ask. Some people who I asked before I prepared for this interview said looks highly interesting, and then some people said, look. I see this man has like a massive government project lead, PhD qualified. Look, I am working as a lead electrician in some corporation. I don't have that massive career. So what kind of read can people expect? Is it a very scientific read, rather hard to read, where you have to sit down, or is it something you can basically read on the way to the work on the bus? Where are we with this book so people can have the right expectation?
Yeah, it's a very short book on purpose. It's less than 100 pages,
Hmm.
and the style of writing is very accessible. I give illustrations from my own experience and others. It's a very easy read on purpose. For those who want to dive into the details of research, I've included an appendix at the back. And so,
Hmm.
because sometimes people, well, that's a great model, but
So
how
you
do I
give the
know if it's
sources for
true?
everything you claim. You actually give the backing for everything. I mean, you are PhD level qualified. Obviously, you do. Otherwise, you wouldn't hold that PhD, obviously. Yeah. So, yeah.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
And so for people who want to do that deep dive, go to the appendix. You can nerd out on all of the details. For those of us, which would be most of us, who are just going, how can this practically help me right now? That's how the book is written. It's meant to be immediately applicable. It's short, like I said, less than 100 pages. It's written at a very it's not assuming that the reader has a whole bunch of experience or a whole bunch of knowledge. It's meant to be understandable and applicable right away. And it's just a simple 4-part little matrix, actually, visually that even works simply. That's the target audience. This sounds bad, is everybody, but it's written that way, right? To be
Hmm.
accessible, and those who want to dive deeper, then there's resources to do that as well. And the other piece at the back of the book, there's a QR code that goes to my website, totally free, where there's a self-assessment. And so if you read the book, you're going, okay, that's really good, but how would I actually apply this? It's a free
Hmm.
30-day guide that you can go there, and it just and there's they literally, you don't have to sign in. There's no cost, and you can work through that guide to apply this book and figure out how to use your heart language effectively
Yeah.
for 30 days.
Yeah, brilliant. So that means people actually can get all the theory behind it that you have in your book easily accessible. People who say, hey, I want the deep dive in science, find the sources can go right there. And then they find the QR code to apply everything in their real life. Of course, there's one final question I have to ask you. When people now say, hey, I read the book, and maybe they say, Mark could be really helpful for us as a trainer or as a speaker at our event or as a coach for our executives or whoever else wants to help get in touch with you. The main question is, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, great question. I'm on LinkedIn, so just search for Mark Wessner on LinkedIn, and I'll come up there. And then my website is leadingwell.ca, because I'm Canadian,
We
and but
are.
I work globally with anybody anywhere. And so either leadingwell.ca or just Mark Wessner on LinkedIn, and that those are the places that I'm most active.
Brilliant. These are the perfect final words. So you see, the heart language can be exactly the key to communication that you need. So at the end of this interview, there's only one thing left for me to say. Mark, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.